When people argue that we can change our energy system overnight, what they're not realising is the scale of what's involved.
If gas and nuclear power was switched off overnight, your lights wouldn't work tomorrow.
We talk about energy security. You want to have more and more renewable power, but you still have to ensure your power system is reliable.
All den kunnskapen vi har tilegnet oss i oljeindustrien, må vi nå kunne bruke til å etablere nye løsninger, slik at de kommende generasjonene får et godt liv.
We need the brilliant minds from all different sources and areas to bring this technology to the forefront in the energy sector.
By my late 20s, all trucks will be hydrogen powered.
I'm really determined to see the end of this, get this thing fired up and pumping electricity into the grid.
I'm really proud being a part of this community that's working on a solution to save the planet.
Thanks to you all for having me. It's really great to be here, and it's even better to see so many familiar faces. I've missed seeing all of you for the last couple of years. So I want to give you an update on what we're working on across all of GE, and in particular at GE Vernova. But first, just to reflect on the morning. I heard a lot of critical topics for manufacturers to be contemplating and wrestling. You heard Andrew talk about how designing and manufacturing a product continue to come closer and closer together, and now how AI is accelerating that. You heard about mass customization and the role that additive is and will continue to play for decades. You heard about how supply chains are digitizing, and coming out of COVID, I think we can all agree that supply chain resiliency is one of the most critical issues that we need to really make sure we wrestle to the ground. But I want to introduce another topic that I would argue is equally critical for manufacturers to contemplate. It's the way that they use and view energy as part of their operation. I would argue that energy, definitely everything that I've learned over the last couple years, is one of your most precious raw materials. We can talk a lot more about that. But when we talk to manufacturing customers, that's not the way manufacturing companies tend to think of it. Manufacturers think of energy as a sunk cost in a lot of ways, an operating expense, or something that is just assumed to be there. But can you imagine showing up to one of your factories and there being no electricity? What would you do? You'd send everyone home and there would be no manufacturing that day. So it's critically important that we change the way we think about energy and all elements of our operation in manufacturing. Now, one debate that never happens is a debate on how important energy is to your operation. Everyone recognizes that it's a critical part of what we do in manufacturing. But we also need to recognize that energy has a profound impact, not just on your operation, but also on society and the environment around you. I have no intention of turning this into a climate debate. But you have to look at the facts. Look at this chart on the right-hand side, and this is just a US data point. This is the number of natural disasters that have caused more than $1 billion worth of damage since 1985. So if there was ever a chart that was up and to the right, this is definitely one of those charts. Energy has a profound impact on your operations, on your society, and on your environment. Pretty important. Now, this is not me casting stones. GE is one of the world's largest manufacturers, and we'll definitely get into what all GE manufactures. This is something I can guarantee we're wrestling from the inside, and we're building software to help all manufacturers continue to drive electrification and then ultimately decarbonization of their operations. And that applies to us as well. But I've talked to several people this morning, and I thought a little bit of a level set on what is GE moving forward might be helpful. Because in the past, when you see the GE logo, you might think we make locomotives, we make caulking for windows, we make appliances, and all those things have historically been true. But moving forward, we have 3 areas of focus, and they're very discrete. One is GE Aerospace, where we make aerospace engines for both commercial and military applications. We have a healthcare company that focuses on delivering a lot of the scanning equipment and making healthcare accessible to everyone. Then we have GE Vernova, which is completely focused on the energy transition. And that's what we want to talk about today, is what we're doing to launch this new company called GE Vernova at the start of next year. Early in 24, GE Vernova will be a separate public company completely focused on the energy transition. Now, just to bring home, what does GE Vernova do? Because historically at GE, a lot of these businesses were distributed across the enterprise. We have 4 areas of focus. 1, we build the equipment that delivers conventional power. So the gas turbines that generates the majority of the power supply in a lot of regions, nuclear power plants, hydroelectric power plants, steam plants. We manufacture that equipment. It's a big part of our operation. Also the wind turbines, both onshore and offshore, those come from GE. Roughly 1/3 of the world's electrons are generated by our customers with our equipment. We also build the grid, the hardware that makes up the grid. So the substations, the transformers, the lines come from our business. And then we are building software to tie all of that together, to bring AI together, to ultimately orchestrate a safer, more resilient, more reliable grid for everyone. That's our focus. And then if you look at what we do for software, we really look across these 3 big areas, and this will bring us to manufacturing, because our strategy is all about electrify the world while simultaneously decarbonizing it. That starts with how energy is produced. We monitor the equipment that generates the electricity, we make sure that it's running efficiently, and we decarbonize that process. Excuse me. It has also to do with how those electrons get distributed around the globe from the point of generation ultimately to the point of consumption. And then our focus on decarbonization is on the consumption side, very specifically in manufacturing. Now, I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit that I never knew this statistic while I was working in manufacturing. And I spent a couple of decades centered around manufacturing before I joined GE. But industrial and manufacturing applications in the US consume roughly 1/4 of all electricity generated, over 27% of electricity generated. Maybe you know that. And honestly, I'm not even interjecting, is that good, is it bad? It's a data point. It's a lot of electricity. So let's start with the data point and work it. Now, another data point that we need to pay attention to is that over 30% of greenhouse gas emissions are coming from industrial and manufacturing applications. So 27% of all electricity generated, these are US statistics, over 30% of greenhouse gas emissions coming from manufacturing. Think back to those natural disasters. It makes a lot of sense to pay attention to these numbers and try to do better. Again, GE included. Beyond just the numbers and the talk track around the impact and maybe we should try to do better, as manufacturers, certainly any of you working in a public company, you recognize that the pressures on manufacturers is real. This is a board discussion. ESG reporting is a real thing. Figuring out how to get accurate data extracted from your operations so that you can accurately report it and work on it is a challenge. Regulators are continuously upping the ante on what they are requiring us as manufacturers to deliver. Your investors care. There are now ESG investors that are really paying attention to your operations, and you'll be able to attract additional investment dollars by being best in class. Your customers, your employees And maybe most importantly, your future talent really cares. The next generation of talent is really paying attention to what you're doing to be better and to treat the planet with the respect that it deserves. Now, the benefits are there as well. Your brand gets a boost. Your employees are more motivated. Employees want to work for companies that they feel like are doing well for the world. Your efficiency goes up, your cost goes down, and you're able to effectively communicate transparently where you are on your ESG goals. Not something that every manufacturing company can do with great accuracy. So I hope you agree that it's time for all of us as manufacturers to really think about energy differently. It is not a sunk cost. It is not an operating expense. It's really something that we need to try to get our arms around optimizing. So here's the good news. All of you as manufacturers are world class in driving operational excellence. Whether it's Six Sigma or at GE, we're big on lean. Everything we do is around the lean operating system. But the challenge is that we have to create the right KPIs. And you're starting to see KEPIs start to show up, your key environmental performance indicators. These things aren't going away. Leverage your operational excellence, be it Six Sigma or lean, create the KPIs and attack them with the same rigor that you're attacking your quality KPIs that all of you have become amazing at delivering on, your delivery APIs and your safety KPIs. Make energy, whatever that means to you, a KPI and work on it. Now here's a framework that I stole from a presentation that I saw probably a decade or longer ago. But I think this is really applicable to anytime we want to advance on anything that we're working on. You really have to have these three things in place, and this goes in your professional life or in what you're trying to do at work. You have to have the right mindset. You have to want to do it. It's not something that we can just wave our hands at and have it pan out. But you also have to have the right tool set. And then ultimately you have to invest in the right skill set. Think of being a tennis player. You want to be a great tennis player, but you don't have a racket, you're probably not going to be very successful. You want to be a good tennis player, you buy a racket, but you don't know what you're doing, you're still not going to be very successful. Mindset, tool set, skill set all matters. I see Jeff looking at me. I think he's thinking that this applies to my golf game because I have the right mindset. I have the right tool set. I swap out my clubs every year just to make sure that that's not the problem. But I don't have the right skill set. So I'm a mediocre golfer. Anything we do, either in the office or outside the office, if we don't have these three things, we're going to be mediocre. So just three challenges for you. Start having the conversation. Make this something that you talk about with your teams. Shift the mindset away from energy is a sunk cost, it's an operating expense, it's something we're entitled to this is something that we are very intentionally going to optimize. We're going to measure where we are. Is 27% good? I don't know. But let's start there and let's track where we're going from there. Digitize the problem. We just heard folks on the stage here talking about digitizing things in the supply chain. Collect the data from the machines. Whatever element of energy you're trying to optimize, make sure your teams have the right tools to collect and collate the data. This is one of the many places that GE is willing to help. In fact, we're building our new world headquarters at 58 Charles Street in Cambridge. All of you who are local, please stop by and see us and get your tool set. And then the last thing is the skill set. If you want to do it and you have the tools, but you don't really know how to do it, you're going to be mediocre and really not move the needle on your KPIs. Get the mindset, make it a KPI, make it a conversation that you're constantly having with your teams. This isn't just something we're going to talk about once and have it go away. Digitize the problem, collect the data, help your teams understand how to interpret that data and turn it from data into actionable insights. Move the needle. This is a phrase that we talk about a lot inside of GE, and this is one of the reasons that we are all in on the energy transition is that we truly believe that collectively society's at a tipping point where over the next decade, collectively, we're going to make a bunch of decisions that are going to have a multi-generational impact, right? And maybe every generation has said that, but we really believe that some of these decisions that we'll make about climate, how we treat the earth, and specifically on energy, is going to have multi-generational impacts. So what I'd encourage you is join me in prioritizing making great decisions where that multi-generational impact is going to be something that you'll be very, very proud of. Thanks for listening.